Let's get this section started with the borrowing plans that we've had. We spent about a year trying to borrow $1 billion from the Eurobond. We never seem to be able to borrow that money. Our folks scared about lending money to Nigeria. We wanted $1 billion from the AFDB, African Development Bank. We got only $600 million first. AFDB says we're keeping the remaining $400 million when we see how you behave and you spend the one we've got. Then we're looking for another $30 billion. So talk to us on this.
No, first of all, the budget is not just an estimate of expenditure and revenue, but it's also a tool of economic management. Therefore, you look at it and see how you're going to use it to affect behavioral decisions by people, consumers, households, and firms. Now, the borrowing we're talking about is that we are spending 34 kobo of every naira of our revenue to service debt, to pay interest, not principal. Now, the reason why that is because your interest rates, your nominal interest rates on your treasury bills are too high. Forget about the MPR. The MPR is at 14%. So you've got to be more accommodative in your stance. Over and above that, you have 22.5% of all deposits in the banks sterilized as CRR. That money is not available, together with a 5% statutory CRR. So you actually have sterilized, and money is stranded where it cannot be used. The fear is that if it is available, it will go to the foreign exchange market. However, if the foreign exchange market is efficient, you shouldn't be afraid of that because there will be effective supply and demand, and you can intervene with the dollars you have in a consistent manner. So there's need to reform the foreign exchange market. There's a need for an accommodative policy. And then the international borrowing is the terms and conditions for borrowing are such that you must meet those conditions. You must behave properly, right? You cannot be a maverick, you see, and therefore, if you are afraid of the conditions and terms of borrowing, then you will not be able to borrow. But the borrowing is a process. You can't just walk into the international banking community and take money like that. There's a process. You could have an IMF endorsement policy for a policy program. You have the Eurobond market. You have the export credit agencies. You have the multilateral loans. But one central point I will ask you is, what is your exchange rate policy? If that is not clear, if that is not consistent, if that is not credible, then it becomes more difficult for you to borrow. The rating agencies will rate you. So it's very easy to say, just go and borrow. And secondly, nobody is borrowing $30 billion. That is a program. That is a program of borrowing. What Nigeria intends to borrow this year is 46% of its deficit from external sources. And that comes about $5 to $6 billion. That's what is on the table. And I think that Nigeria will get it, provided we are willing to meet the conditions and provided we are willing to behave ourselves properly.
Well, thank you very much, Bismarck Rwani. And then let's remind our viewers to be part of the conversation. Of course, we're counting down to the final minutes of the program. We've got about 20 minutes left thereabout. Don't forget on Twitter at Channels TV or at B's Morning, that's the show Twitter handle, or you can tweet at BBosin. And of course, we can also please remember to put the hashtag at Budget 2016 Roundtable all together as one word. If you're savvy on the social media, you know how to put that, isn't it? Okay, keep them coming. We got Adequito Bero, who says, I think we have a poor fiscal regime. Apart from increasing the tax base, do we consider tax incentives for the private sector? That's a question mark. And we got another one from Ikwemosa, who says, interest rate cannot be reduced as a matter of course. A decision on MPR must be supported by economic fundamentals and situations. But very important, let's bring it home. What's the need for you? 160 million Nigerians, and wherever you are watching around the world, what should you be prepared for as we speak? What's in the budget for you, and what is not in the budget for you? It's a double-edged sword. Femi Awoyemi, the Chief Executive Officer and Financial Analyst at ProShare Nigeria. Talk through this. What should Nigerians be preparing for, and what is in the budget for them, and what is not in the budget for them?
Most people believe that the budget is a statement of intent. It also can provide an indication of the type of vision you have. When Bismarck said that it was an expansionary budget, I think we're tending to give the government too much of a pass. But without sounding too much negative, I'm going to lean more towards where Idris left off. My general conclusions about this in terms of your borrowing is that if you have a $360 billion infrastructural gap for a country, every single numbers you're throwing up here is just like you're playing around the musical chairs, really. Because that's not really nothing. If you look at the fundamental denominator in this whole disturbing scenario, you have 180 million people. Every year you grow population by 3%. That's your rock bottom minimum growth rate you need in any basic thing. But yet, if you look at virtually everything you're doing, they are far below that growth rate. You are sitting on a major crisis available to you with pressures on your government, consistent pressure, year in, year out, day in, day out tomorrow. So by the end of 2017, some of you may look back and will say that 2016 was a good year.
Oh, very interesting and alarming outlook there from Femi Awuyemi. But let's then come back to this side of the table. Wale Obayomi, what do you think? What should Nigerians prepare for? Break it down.
Okay, let me talk about the fiscal incentives mentioned before. There's an exercise going on at the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment to review the partnership incentive regime, which is to give income tax holiday to investors in the priority sectors. And also under the budget, there is a provision for 20 billion naira export expansion grant, which is going to be granted as a tax credit. The only challenge with that is that there is a huge backlog to be dealt with, and there's no reference to that in the budget. And also for the tax credit, you only work if you have tax payable. In the year where companies really are making losses, really, that tax credit becomes really not worth anything, particularly when there's no reference in the budget whether it's going to be allowed to be commercialized. In other words, can I trade in it, in order to get cash in? Now, coming to the question in terms of what should Nigeria expect, I think it will be another tough year. I mean, we're currently going to a tough year, but it should not be tougher. If government puts the measures in place, particularly based on the input that we're providing at this table, there's need to do a supplementary budget and again to look at some of the policies.
In basic terms, I'm going to line one or two things, yes. And I want perhaps you say, Mr. Obayomi, whether this is yes or no. Should we prepare for increase in electricity tariffs? Yes or no?
If we are not paying economic rate, yes, we should be prepared for it.
Okay. Fuel price as well?
Yes.
Transportation costs?
Absolutely.
Okay. So the basic indices, food prices as well?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Now, minimum wage, do you think we should increase that in 2017?
Well, I mean, if government looks at the FX rate, most of they are the largest employer in the country. They should have more naira to be able to pay increase in wage bill.
Very interested.
Yes.
Shuraibu Idris, thank you very much. The quick question here is this. Social intervention program in 2017 budget is 150 billion naira. Do you think this is good enough for 160 million people?
Honestly, given the misery index is a paltry figure. And there's just no two way about it. Nigerians are poor, and we are feeling majority of Nigerians are living below the poverty line, spending less than $1–2 a day. And the intervention amount of 150 billion naira is a paltry sum. However, the explanation by Senator Udo Udoma yesterday that they intend to recapitalize Bank of Industry and Bank of Agriculture with a view to enhance the diversification. Maybe if we encourage more Nigerians to be entrepreneurial, because some of us are quite entrepreneurial, we might be able to see, a suko there. But
150 billion is not enough. Even if we take the money, put it on the table, and ask everybody to line up and just share it. But that looks like a very simple, simplistic.
If I'm thirsty and you give me a droplet of water, it probably won't even pass my throat. Talk less of going to my stomach.
But you got something in your mouth.